Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Today, my very special guest is TED Talk speaker, coach, USMC retired captain, Mr. Gary Biss. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing well. I hope you are.
I'm doing good. I'm good. I appreciate you coming on the show. I always love having my brothers and sisters and moms on here because we got stories to tell. And your story was pretty darn cool because you went from a dark place to purpose. And there's so many of us that don't make it to that. We end up putting a gun in our mouth. Too
Mm.
many of us. Or we just decide to quit. So getting to the purpose part is a beautiful thing. I've gotten to it, you got into it. So I wanted to have you on to talk about that story and what you're doing to pay it forward as you go.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Certainly. Thank you for this opportunity to come on and chat with your audience and share some great conversation with you. I appreciate the opportunity. So a little bit of
Ex-
my darkness, unfortunately, we're seeing many veterans when they transition from military service, they just enter a dark period of their life. For a lot of veterans, it's for different reasons. But one thing I found was through my own journey, I really began to understand and get in touch with one of the biggest causes for this veterans struggle is just that transition itself. The loss of everything that we've come accustomed to and really adapted to in the military is stripped away from us in many different ways. And as you talk about purpose, purpose is one of the kind of it fulfills a fundamental need for us by providing direction, by providing some reason for the things that we're engaging in our life. The biggest thing that purpose or a sense of meaning provides for us is the capacity to endure hard and challenging times. And part of life journey is that you're going to go through hard and challenging times. When you've lost that sense of purpose, it affects your ability to take the punches as they come or roll through the challenges in life. And that's something that leads a lot of veterans, unfortunately, to a very dark place.
So tell me, you got out of the military, or it's a little different from officers and enlisted, but you got out. You got your certificate, your DD 214. I think you get
Hmm.
14s. You get your DD 214. Hey, great job, a captain, and have a good life. What happens? What happened next? I saw there was addiction. I saw that there was you almost became one of the statistics. So talk about that.
Yeah, certainly. So probably not uncommon to a lot of veterans. So I'd been in the Marine Corps for 16 and a half years. So everything I knew of myself and of the world was through the lens of military service. As I was becoming an adult, as parts of my brain were developing that allow me to really understand and find that sense of identity and purpose, it was all through the lens of military service. So when I got out, I wanted to go find out who the heck this Garrett Biss guy was. So I tried to separate myself, not for any bad reason, but I just wanted to, all right, I know who former Lance Corporal Biss was. I know who Captain Biss was, but who's this Garrett Biss guy? So I distanced myself a bit and went and tried to find my way, find my role in the civilian world, figure out what that would look like. And very quickly, I began struggling with one was a lack of confidence that started to boil up. I realized that I've been really successful in the military and had gotten awards, gotten promotions and all that, but I didn't know how well or if that could translate to the civilian world. So not knowing that brought a just venturing off into the unknown brought a sense of anxiety and stress with it. And then I really started to struggle from that lack of connection, that brotherhood or that sisterhood that we form in the military. It's
Hmm.
unlike any other kind of connection that other people experience, maybe some first responders. But when you have somebody by your side for the years that you're in the military that's willing to go into the fight with you and willing to face the hardest things that humans can face with you, supporting you, loving you through it, and then you're taken away from that and you find yourself in a society or in a community surrounded by people that they don't understand that, they don't understand the loss. So that really stripped away the foundation for the peace or for the mental health that I had, compounding that with trying to figure out what I was going to do professionally and what my role in society was going to be really led me to a dark place. And unfortunately, I became one of the too many veterans that started thinking about what's an exit plan look like from this? How do I get out from this suffering?
The extraction from it. I went through it too. The VA threw a bunch of pills at me like it did a bunch of veterans. Here you go. And then just trying to figure out who I was, trying to deal with what happened. And when it finally what happened with, and it happens to a lot of veterans, I got into law enforcement and the adrenaline.
Yeah.
Every As long as it fed the beast, it was good. But then I got
Right.
hurt. And then I
Mm.
had to lay down and I had to think about things. And then it all went downhill from there. It was just problem after problem. and everything that PTSD and everything related to that brings. And finding the purpose was, it's something that I barely came. I got out in '06. I got out in '06, and I barely got under my feet about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you made that transition,
it
and I'm grateful for you to be here sharing your story and trying to connect other veterans who are going through that. The statistics are they're heartbreaking. We hear about the number of veterans whose lives end in an untimely fashion, whether self-inflicted or whether through just reckless behaviors or through accidental overdoses. And it's heartbreaking to think of how many people stepped forward, raised their hand, said they're going to do what they can to serve their country, make the greatest contribution that they can to their society. To find them in such a dark place afterward is tragic.
And you know what? The good thing about this county where I live in Texas is that they just started a veterans treatment court, so that
Right.
these vets that don't have, as long as their crime is not aggravated, pretty much they get to go through a program, and they spend a year and they got to work for it. And they go through treatment, they get everything that they need, and they got to put
Mhm.
an effort in there. And it's actually a master gunnery sergeant who's running the program, Master Guns, and it's something that just started happening here, and it's working, and they're getting vets in, and it's a second chance for these guys to do something. But what is the common what is the common thing that we do as veterans that you've seen when we're coming out? What is the common thing that we do that sets us up for failure?
It comes back to those kind of fundamental needs that we lose. So I'm not saying that anything that we do in the service is hard or challenging, but when you have that connection, you have that brotherhood or that sisterhood, when you have that strong sense of meaning, and when you feel comfortable being in the environment so that you can be yourself, you show up as the version of yourself that you are. All of these things help us mitigate some of those effects and help us deal with some of those challenges. And then part of the military culture is bottling things up that you don't have time to deal with now. There's always the next thing you got to do for the mission or the next thing that you got to do to prepare. And there's also this feeling that you don't want to let other people down. So you don't want to be the one that's the problem because you want to be somebody contributing to the mission, not taking away from it. When you transition out, you lose that sense of connection, you lose that sense of meaning, and now you're not shoulder to shoulder with those people that you're serving with. A lot of those things bubble up. Unfortunately, a lot of people will turn to, whether you turn to some of the traditional treatment models out there, which like myself and like you experienced, they just want to diagnose a problem and find a symptom that they can treat with some kind of medication. It's typically the path that a lot of veterans are facing. And the challenge with that is you don't get better by masking symptoms. You get better by healing whatever that wound is or filling whatever that void is inside. So though it might provide a little bit of temporary relief, it's certainly not a long-term solution. And the veterans I talk to, so I do some addiction recovery coaching with veterans that have struggled. And one of the common stories that I hear is, hey, Garrett, I've been prescribed 8, 9, 10, a dozen different medications for all the symptoms. And then to deal with the symptoms that those medications create. And maybe I'm not, having panic attacks when I walk out my front door anymore. Maybe I'm not having as horrible night terrors when I go to sleep, but I'm also not me. They say like they just feel like they're a ghost or they feel like they're a version of themselves, the shadow of themselves. That's not engaging in life. That's not experiencing joy and making a contribution. So maybe they've put out some of those flames, but they're certainly not dealing with those root causes. And that's one of the biggest challenges that I see a lot of veterans face because that's how we're corralled or that's what we're funneled into is this kind of process. And like myself and like many other veterans, sometimes it's not just medications that were prescribed or treatments that don't help. Maybe we try to find ways to self-medicate some habits or some behaviors that we picked up in the military that help us deal with some of the stress and some of the times that we need to bottle up and can't face. Those can certainly accelerate. So whether it's alcohol, whether it's any other, drugs that people are getting their hands on, and I'm not, as a recovery coach, I'm not like for or against. I'm not suggesting that anything is bad that somebody engages in or indulges in. They certainly have their place. It's the consequences that we have of it that really lead us to a bad situation. If the consequence of you bottling and numbing the pain all the time is that you never get to resolve it and it only kind of fuels the flame of that sense of void or that pain that's inside of you, that's not leading you to a better place either. So that's the challenge that we face is not getting to the root of the problems or not really healing and moving forward as the best version of ourselves, but just masking those symptoms and trying to push forward as best we can.
I love how you talk about that because that is true with the symptoms. They give you a Prozac so that you're up, but they give you Wellbutrin because you're down. and then they give you your high blood pressure because you're taking an SSRI. So here's a blood pressure. And it just keeps going and going. And you're right. You end up becoming a shell of yourself because you're medicated. And then the one thing that I always heard when I went and got treatment and really got down is the one thing that I always heard was, I'm angry. You ever heard vets like that? That's the one thing they express. What's going on with you? I'm angry. And then
Absolutely.
you try, that is the symptom of what's going on in there. And the thing is that anger in motion can be quite destructive, and not just,
Absolutely.
and obviously by the all the ones that we're losing, anger has been the most destructive force to us,
Mm,
because for the most part, for 99.9% of us, we don't want to hurt anybody else. We didn't come back from war to hurt anybody else, and we sure don't want to hurt those we love. But we get into this anger circle. Can you talk about that anger circle that you've seen?
absolutely. It's a common thing, a common emotion. What I've learned about anger is that anger is the byproduct of other emotions that we're not facing or not dealing with. So the more we can bottle up some sadness, we can bottle up some grief, we can bottle up some loneliness, we bottle these things up. And when it blows over, it turns into anger. And anger is something that's much harder to control. So that's what leads to a lot of the problems that we have. But for many instances or many cases, anger is not the original emotion or the undealt with emotion. It's the byproduct of not dealing with emotion and the sense of helplessness. So for me, when that anger comes up, if I am not in sometimes it takes me a little while to get to a clear place where I can really think about it. But the anger, when that's boiling up, it affects our brain function. It affects the way that we can think, the way that we can see. And for me, when I feel angry with that, I also feel a sense of hopelessness because maybe I can feel the anger. I understand it. I see the way that I'm talking. I see the way that I'm reacting and I don't like it, but I also feel helpless in the moment to stop it, which only compounds that sense of anger.
Yeah, yeah, it does, and it just keeps building, and then destructive things happen. But you work with vets, and you work with a lot of people, and you've come up with a way to go from there to purpose.
Mhm.
And I want you to talk about that. And how does a vet go from that darkness to purpose?
Yeah, so it's certainly a multi-step process, and the work I do through Valiant Path is it's derived from and heavily influenced by applied positive psychology and some personal development training that I was exposed to. And that was my journey really from the darkest place, was not solely through traditional treatments for the symptoms that I was facing, but I was very fortunate to connect with a mentor that helped me by starting to rebuild myself, connecting with myself again. So we lose connection to other people. That's tragic. And that creates a very bad situation. But through that process, also, we can lose connection with ourselves. We can lose connection with who we are. And if you talk to guys that say, I don't know what I want, I don't know I don't know what's missing. I know something's missing. I don't even know what brings me joy anymore. That's a symptom or that's a sign to me that they've lost connection with themselves. And through that, we lose our sense of confidence. We lose our sense of self-worth. We lose our self-esteem or even our ability to envision us getting to a better place. And that all really just compounds that sense of hopelessness that we feel, which oftentimes turns into anger. So through the work that I do and what I was introduced to is reconnecting with yourself. We can very easily, our minds are hardwired. We can very easily remember and think about and recall some of the mistakes that we've made in the past and the times that we let somebody down or the times that we didn't do the right thing or what we wanted to do. Unfortunately, our mind tends to quickly move past and lessen the value of the wins and successes that we've had. And there's a reason for it. It's all about self-preservation. A mistake that we made in the past, if we make that in the future, it could come back and hurt us. So we want to remember that so we don't repeat those mistakes. The challenge is if all we can remember are the things that are going well in our life, the mistakes that we've made, the things that we wish we'd have done differently, the times that we let somebody down. If that's all that we remember, if that's all that's in our conscious awareness, that doesn't make us feel very good. Doesn't make
As
us feel
vet
good about ourselves.
as vets, have you seen, I'm sorry to cut you, but
No,
as
please.
vets, have you seen that a lot in us where we magnify the suck, the bad, and not the positive changes? Have you seen a lot of that?
Absolutely. With veterans, it's really part of human nature. It's common for a lot of individuals, especially when they get to a dark place, but it's certainly something that compounds that situation that veterans face. So part of the journey out of that is reconnecting with ourselves. So one of the first exercises I'll do with my coaching clients is let's make a list of 100 wins or successes that you've had in your life.
Mm,
Because if you can't rattle off and think of 100 things that you've done that are, whether it's learning to walk, learning to read, enlisting in the military, going on that first deployment, buying a car, getting a driver's. If you can't rattle off a list of those 100 things, then that's indicative of how bad you are, how bad of a place you are personally or internally. So that's a very effective and great way to start. If nothing else, it provides a little bit of reprieve from all those negative thoughts and the patterns that are going on in your mind, and helps you begin to reconnect with that value that you have and that sense of worth. Because if we don't feel a sense of self-worth and we don't feel that we are very valuable ourselves, and we also don't have what it takes to strive for, to do some of those things that we need to create change in our life, that positive change in our life.
Wow. And I was sitting here thinking, as soon as you said that, I started going through a list of things, trying to figure out the things that are positive. And I love how you went back to even just walking. That is a positive step. It's something that we've done big. And we tend to, and this is just experience, personal experience, but we do tend to focus on the bad. So when you get to these, when you get these, because you said you came up with a system. When you get
Mhm.
to working with them about identifying their positives, how do you move them from there?
So that's really just starts to repair the foundation for what they're working with. And then the next step is typically getting reconnected with the strengths that you have. Again, we can all think of the weaknesses that we have or the things that we can't do very well. But when was the last time you sat down and looked at your sense of the strengths that you have? My understanding, if you go to a clinician, their main focus is to diagnose you. Now, they find something that's wrong with you because that's something that they can treat. From my perspective, from a coaching perspective, the more a positive psychology perspective is, let's find the things that are right with you. Let's find the things that are going well. Are you creative? Do you have good leadership? Are you articulate? Do you like to problem solve? Do you like to work in groups? These are all strengths that you have that are innate to you that you could leverage the next time you face a challenge. If the only thing that you can recall and the only thing that you have access to are the things that you suck at, when you face a challenge, that doesn't really empower you to move beyond that. So rebuilding our sense of self-worth first, and then reconnecting with the strengths that we have, and then using that to move forward.
That is an amazing. Tell me, and you, how long have you been doing this? Where you came up with this program?
My journey through this, it's really been built as I've been moving through this journey. So for the last, since about 2017 or 18, I was working primarily with just individuals in addiction recovery, finding that there's a huge gap or huge opportunity there to provide some of the things that were introduced to me to other people that are really lacking that sense of self-confidence and that direction in life. They feel like they've lost their sense of purpose, aren't experiencing much joy. So I was a co-founder of an addiction recovery residence, which is a long-term facility that individuals can go to after they go to treatment. So they have the safe, supportive environment to continue their growth. And then about a year and a half ago, I had this epiphany that when I left the Marine Corps, I went out to find who Gary Biss was. And really that journey was to find access to these tools and to these resources to help individuals come back. And about a year and a half ago, I was like, what am I doing? The audience that I want to serve the most is that veteran community that I'm most connected with. I certainly understand that struggle and that journey the most. And I feel not only am I most grateful when I can help another veteran because I understand what they've been through, but also I think it does the best net good impact on the world and on the community. Think of the veterans that we serve with, some of the most in the greatest ingenuity, the greatest creativity, the greatest sense of hard work and determination. If those people aren't doing well in our society, then our whole society is going to be affected. We can help the veterans show up as that better version of themselves and make the contribution that they're capable of. That's going to have just tremendous effects on the entire society and our communities moving forward.
It is. It is. It definitely is. Now, can you think of, because I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of vets and I've seen some of the testimonials you have. Can you tell me a story that sticks with you about somebody who came and found purpose?
That's a great question. Everybody I help find purpose in a unique way. And there's a process to do that. So one of the things that has been really effective for me is reconnecting with that sensation of joy. When you're in a dark
Oh,
place and you don't feel good about yourself, how much time do you devote to just doing things that bring a sensation of joy into your life? The more that we forego that, or the more that we push that off, thinking that we don't deserve it, there's not time for it, I can't afford it, continues to keep us in that bad or that dark place. So just doing simple little things like, hey, I like to go mountain bike riding in the woods. I like to walk in nature. I like to go fishing. I like to see a sunset. All these things that in that moment, it fills me up a little bit or brings some joy into my life. That's also like a muscle. If we haven't felt joy in a period of time, that we lose the ability to do it. You know, that muscle will atrophy over time. So starting to bring some things that you enjoy back into your life, for one, it fuels that sense of self-worth, but also it reminds you that not everything in life has to suck. And there is a better possibility. There is the potential for a better future to move forward. I can't think of one specific example of that, but many little examples of just helping people reconnect with a hobby that they had or an interest that they had. Maybe it's not something they're going to pursue professionally, but it's something that helps their life as a whole have more joy and have a greater sense of meaning.
My ability to find joy was very much affected. It took many years to get where I felt joy. I always had that same face on. And inside, I was happy that I was there with my kids. And
Yeah.
inside, I felt that I was okay. I was happy that I was there with my kids, but I couldn't connect to joy. I couldn't get out of my, and that
Right.
was and I hate to use those words because those words kind of trap you in those things, but that's how I felt. I felt
Right.
trapped in kind of a cocoon that didn't allow me to feel what I
Mhm.
wanted to feel. And about 99.9% of the time, you're the one who creates your own prison. At least that's what
Right.
I've seen. You create your own cell that you put around you, like this big perimeter, and you go and you fortify it and you fortify it and you fortify it until eventually nothing gets in, not even light. It's you wrap yourself up so tight. Now, one of the things that's needed in changing is accountability. And in that valiant path, you talk about accountability. How do you achieve that?
So through a couple different ways. One is helping us be accountable to ourselves. So whether that's through some technology, some apps, sometimes just writing down goals or writing down a plan can help us stay accountable to ourselves. Also through having connection with other veterans or connection with a mentor or a coach, just having somebody that's a little externally accountable can be a huge source of motivation sometimes when we don't want to do something. Everybody knows that. So if you ever had a workout buddy or been in a book club or something, we know that if somebody else knows whether or not we achieve something or accomplish a daily task that we set for us, if we know that we have to report that to somebody else, sometimes that's just the little bit of extra motivation that we need to go ahead and get it done. So that's the one simple way that we, as working together, either working with veterans in the group or just working one on one, can help hold each other accountable so that we can make that progress that we want.
That is fantastic. It's not every day somebody gets to say that they help and they make the world better. And you're trying it, and not only are you trying and doing it, but you're doing it with some of the people that we value the most, and that's our brothers and sisters in arms. Thank you, Captain, for doing that and for investing yourself in that. What is the biggest impediment that you've had to making this bigger, to doing more?
I think just getting the word out there that it's possible, that there are some alternative sources. So back to my experience in the addiction recovery community, I saw a study that said that about 28 to 30 million adult Americans struggle with addiction of some form, some substance or behavior that's creating negative consequences in their life. We go to seek help for that, there's only a handful of resources that kind of come to the top of the list or that people refer us to. What I understand is that 30 million people are struggling. That's 30 million different life paths. That's 30 million different stories of experiences and situations and events and traumas even that led somebody down that path. There's not going to be one or 10 or even 100 different solutions out of that. Everybody that's struggling or everybody that's experiencing a version of their life or a version of themselves that they don't want, there's a solution to it. There's a path out of that. You just have to be open to it and seek the resource and seek the tools. So that's the biggest thing I do with the recovery coaching is just helping people understand therapists aren't your only option. They can provide great benefit. And so for some people, it's not all the benefit that they want. Self-help groups, that can be a great option. But for some people, it doesn't provide all the benefit that they want. There's also other tools and resources out there. And one of the best things to do is find somebody that's been in a place that you've been and then find some way, hear their story, listen to them on how they can get out of it. So for veterans that are listening to this, maybe this is a great source that they can come to on this show to hear some other veteran stories and how people navigated the challenges so they can begin to piece together their own plans and move forward.
And I love having our stories out because there's so much that we have to say and so much that we have to share on our experiences. Our lives go so deep with what we've done. A lot of times we've done more by the time we're 21 than most people do their whole lives. As a Navy man, I went all over the planet. Most people never leave their town. So there was so much that I saw, so much I did, so much it just so much life happened in
Yeah.
such a short time, and then coming out of that ride, that roller coaster, into the world of widgets and doing the grind and having to transition from that is just crazy. If somebody is seeking that kind of help, how could they get to you? What is the best way to communicate and get with you about trying to make things better?
Absolutely. One of the first things I want to really share is just the message of my TEDx talk. If anybody's interested and they want to check that out, it's 11-minute talk where I just talk about the major challenges that are very common to veterans and one of the sources of a lot of the suffering that veterans face. You can go to unspokentrauma.vet, or you can just Google me and I'm sure the TEDx talk will come up in YouTube. Anybody that wants to share that with others, I invite you or I encourage you to set aside some time and let's schedule a watch party. So if you watch the video, the TEDx talk, and it's something resonates with you and you think that's a message that other veterans should hear, and let's work together. You can, and on that website on unspokentrauma.vet, you can find a way to schedule a watch party so that we can share this with other people, but not just watch the video together. Really, the value of that is having an opportunity for everybody to share their thoughts and their feelings, and share some of the things that they're going through or whatever they took away from it. So that's a great way. And then something special I put together for your audience, which I'm excited to share. It's called the Warrior Reset. And you can go to, I'll share it with you for the show notes, but you can go to thewarriorreset.com. And there you'll find it's a really special program I put together that shares some of the most efficacious or most impactful and quickest working interventions and tools that I found to help make a difference, whether it's emotionally, physiologically, spiritually. Sometimes we all just need that little reset to get back to that version of ourselves that we want to be. So if you go there, there's a 10-day program you can go through. It's all free for your audience. So you can go there, you get some little audio lessons and a journal that you can use for 10 days. So like I said, if you feel like something's missing, if you feel like all the cylinders aren't firing, or just you want to show up as a better version of yourself, need a little reset, highly encourage you to check that out.
I definitely want to I'm going to get all your links and stuff like that and make sure that I put it in the comments so that we can get as much exposure to it as possible. You're doing good work, and it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. And I'm so thankful as one of your brothers and as an enlisted man always. I'm very happy that you're doing this. And I love when my other brothers and sisters that are doing similar things to help people. I thank you so much for coming on and telling your story. In my show, the guest always has the last word, so I'll give you the mic.
I appreciate it. And thank you for all you're doing. So for anybody that's listening, I just want you to know, if you've forgotten it, know that you're lovable, you're valuable, and you have what within you, what you need to get back to that version of your life or that version of yourself that you want to be. You just have to find it, reach out, find the tools and make that progress or make that journey possible.
Yep. And for me, and the thing is that for me, it was faith. And faith for me 6 years ago, it saved me. It did. And it
Beautiful.
changed everything. But for you and those listening and for everybody, it could be different. Garrett he has another way to do it. Whatever you have to do to stay alive and be that person and find your purpose, do it, brothers and sisters. Don't give up. Don't give up. Again, thank you so much for coming on. Can you stick around after the show real quick?
I'll do it.
Thank you.